Hello and welcome. I'm Travis, your Office Solutions Pro. In today's video, we're going to talk about whether to use a solution or not to use a solution. So this video is not going to be very long. It's just a quick primer on what are some good reasons you might want to do a solution as part of your Power App development. When we talk about solutions, we're talking about over here on the left-hand side here, instead of the Power App environment, we can see solutions. So if we click on solutions, we're going to see that we've got these different options here that I've already created or have access to. And we can come up here and we can create a new solution. And you can select the publisher or you can create your own. And in this case, you can see I created the Office Solutions Pro. Solutions allow you to basically contain all of the app's elements within that solution. So any tables you create or any environment variables are going to be created all inside of this package that can be moved between environments very easily. Think about it in terms of the components we've been talking about for the last couple of videos. It's very similar in idea. Essentially, you can create these solutions that you can move between different environments, and you essentially give the component, in this case, an entire functional app in a lot of cases, or its own actual component to another environment, to another user, to another team, and it's very modular in design. Now, what we have here are some reasons why you would want to use a solution, and then we've got some reasons why you would want to avoid a solution. And now this is not a comprehensive list. This is kind of the big considerations you might want to look at when you're considering whether to do a solution or not. It's not going to have all the ins and outs of every single thing you should consider, but if you can answer these questions, 99% of the time, this is probably going to answer whether you should do a solution or not with these different considerations. Now, four reasons for a solution. The first one is environment and application lifecycle management, or ALM. Now, this usually applies to big apps. So if there's an application that we could foreseeably have a lot of updates over the course of the application's life, and it's going to have these constant pushes out to consumers, maybe it's across multiple environments, and that we get into the multi-environment usage here. That's when you're definitely going to want to use a solution, because it's going to make it a lot easier to do that and not have downtime or potential issues with the application as part of that process. Now, if you're also building an application as part of a team project, then you might also want to consider a solution, because a solution will allow you to kind of break that up into different pieces. So maybe somebody's working on the component portions and somebody else is working on the actual app. And then maybe you've got somebody that's working on the relational table design. So you can kind of subdivide out the solution. And you can do this a little bit without a solution, but it's easier with a solution because everything, again, is going to be self-contained inside of this solution package that you're building. If you're using Microsoft Dataverse, you're also going to want to consider using solutions. Now, one of the things that solutions does is when you select the publisher for the solution, all of the tables that you build inside of that solution are going to have that prefix of the solution publisher. So it's going to allow you to have, for example, multiple solutions with table name of, take your pick of a name. If you build it outside of a solution, the Dataverse table is likely going to have the environments prefix, and you're going to run into problems if you have the same name across multiple different applications. Whereas when you do it inside of a solution, that becomes less of an issue. I have had issues where I created something outside of a solution, and then all of a sudden that table name wasn't available later on for other small applications that were also outside of solutions. So that is something to consider, is the prefix that gets added to all of your tables. It makes it a little bit easier to have tables of the same name across different applications. Now, if the applications can be managed across multiple environments, so for example, it's a managed solution, so you can update that one solution and update all the different environments that use that solution. Very easy through a solution. That's a lot more difficult if you have an unmanaged solution maybe and you're trying to update multiple environments. So solutions can help with that better than, say, just a application that is outside of a solution where deployment isn't as easy as it is as part of a solution. And then if you have a model-driven app requirement, you're definitely going to want to take a look at using a solution, because as part of that, it's implied that you're going to have Dataverse tables, because Dataverse tables work with model-driven apps. So you're already going to have a lot of the different aspects of a solution as part of a model-driven app design. Probably going to be in your best interest to use a solution for that. And if security is going to be more robust, solutions provide significantly more options in terms of security. So you're definitely going to take a look at maybe using a solution if you have to have a certain level of security added in there. So what are some examples of when you would want to use a solution? Maybe it's asset management or some sort of program management or some sort of document management. So essentially really large programs is what we're talking about a lot of times when it comes to whether you would use a solution or not. So what are some reasons to avoid a solution? Well, if it's a simple application, so for example, maybe it's just a survey. It's a one screen, maybe two screens with a thank you screen, and it's a very simple process. Maybe you're not doing any kind of metrics or anything as part of the application. Maybe that'll be kind of inside the Power BI portion of the system. So very simple applications, a lot of times you don't necessarily need to have a solution. You can still use a solution for simple applications, but a lot of times if it's just kind of a very simple app, maybe it's got a couple SharePoint lists or a couple of Excel files, and that's all that it's really doing. You don't necessarily need a solution for that, but again, it's never wrong to use a solution, so just keep that in mind. It doesn't matter if it's a small app or a big app, but generally speaking, you can get away with not using a solution if it's a very simple application. Maybe it's just a prototype or a proof of concept that you're putting out there, and it's a very simple app again, or maybe it's even a little bit more complex, but it's just kind of an example, or you don't actually plan to use it. That's a great example of when you might not want to put it inside of a solution. If it's only going to be in a single environment, that's also something to consider is you don't necessarily need to have a solution for things that are just going to be in that one environment. They're never going to go anywhere. I would say if you're still doing some of these larger programs here and it's inside of a single environment, then you're still going to want to use a solution for some of those things. If it has no requirements for Dataverse, that might be an indicator that maybe you don't necessarily need to have a solution for it. But I also have quite a few applications I've built using SharePoint that are also inside of solutions. So again, these aren't always going to apply in every situation. You're going to have to use your best judgment on when to use a solution or when not to use a solution. But I can tell you if it's a very simple application, most of the time you can get by without having to use a solution. Anything a little bit more complex, you're probably going to want to put it inside of a solution. If there's a very minimum security concerns, for example, maybe all the security is managed by the SharePoint permissions and you don't have to worry about anything beyond how the SharePoint handles security, that might be another indicator that you don't necessarily need to have a solution. Again, these are just examples that you can consider. I've got plenty of Power Apps that use SharePoint tables that I also put inside of a solution. What are some examples? Well, surveys, suggestion tools, so like a suggestion box, a simple request process. Maybe they got to request some support from one of the other departments or one of the other divisions, and it's a very simple process of creating a request and it routing to where it needs to go, something like that. All of those are great examples of when you wouldn't necessarily need to have a solution. Another great way to look at this is if you're using SharePoint's Integrate, where you're just building the Power App as kind of like a replacement for the form, all of those are not inside of solutions. So if it's something very simple in terms of like just a form designed for a SharePoint list and it's very equivalent in scope and size, that would normally not be inside of a solution. It's just part of the integrate within the SharePoint, the Power Apps environment. So those are all great examples of when you wouldn't necessarily need a solution. All right, so now that we know when you would want to use a solution versus when you wouldn't want to use a solution, how do we actually do everything, right? So let's say we're building a new solution. So we just come up here in the solution area. So if we're in solutions, we hit the new solution. We can type our name in there and do everything here. Now, what about the publisher? Because I mentioned you could use the standard. This is the default publisher. Every table that you create outside of a solution is going to have this default publisher as kind of the preceding aspect of that table. Everything that I built using this is going to have that as the preceding table name. So it's going to kind of differentiate between maybe I've got a context table in every single one of my solutions. It's going to have this as kind of the prefix before that table name. So I can have contacts in every single one of my solutions. And maybe that's the standard naming convention I have for tables. Solutions allow for doing that. If I create a table outside of a solution, it's going to have this prefix here, and it's going to run into problems if I try to recreate the exact same table again inside of the environment. So just kind of be aware of that is an extra benefit of using solutions over not using solutions, as I mentioned earlier. So what if I need to create a new publisher, right? So if I hit the new publisher here, it's very easy. You can name it whatever you want. So I can go with maybe Office Solutions like this, and then I can do Office Sol like that, and then I can put whatever description on here. I can put a prefix in here if I want to as well. So maybe it's going to be OSC or something along those lines. And then I can also set a prefix value here as well. And then we can kind of see what this is how it's going to name tables. So if I create objects inside of the solution, this is what's going to happen if I use this as my publisher. Now we can also add the contact information. Now when you create solutions, all of this information is kind of loaded into the background that you don't necessarily see. So all this information, for example, if I was doing plugins or if I'm doing some sort of JavaScript or custom code type thing, all of this would also be programmed directly into the coding for that as well. So just keep that in mind when you're putting this information in there is if you share components or things that you build, code components, that kind of stuff, all that information is going to transfer as part of that component as well. All right, that's how you would build a publisher. Let's go ahead and hit the cancel here. Now, what if I want to create a new solution? All I have to do is, in the example of this solution here, I just named it SVG icon. Maybe we'll do just app icon solution, and then I can select my publisher here, and then I can set a version number if I want to have it something different from this approach here. I'm going to come down here and we've got more options. You don't have to worry about doing anything else here in this screen. That's all that you need to do to create a solution. It really is just that simple. I'm not going to go ahead and create the button here, so I'm just going to open up one that already exists so you can kind of see what the solution looks like on the inside. So let's hit cancel here, and then we're going to look at this SVG icon solution, which is a very simple solution. Again, this is one of those things that wouldn't necessarily need to be inside of a solution because it is a very basic solution. It's got one table and that's it. There's nothing else here. And it's really just kind of designed to illustrate how this works. So again, the name is Office Solution Pro icon. So that's the table name that gets added. So when I created this, I selected the solution that I created and that gets added to that table. And then it breaks down and it'll actually subdivide everything here. Or if I wanted to see everything in one view, it has an option to see everything, like in this case here. If I had an app for this, for example, it would show up here. If I had cards, chat box, or any other things, there's a lot more options that you can put in here. All of these things here. So if I had flows or if I had cards or chatbots, dashboards, you have the ability to create all of these different things. And that's the benefit of Solution is everything associated with this app is all contained inside of this one solution. And then if I need to move it or say I want to have a managed and unmanaged solution, that kind of thing, it's very easy to move it between environments because it's all right there and contained within the solution. Now that we've kind of gone through all of this, we've done the components, we've done the solution, the next thing is to actually start building some applications. And we're going to start with some things that don't necessarily need solutions just so you can kind of see what that looks like. And then we're going to move into some solution stuff in the future. And some of the apps are going to be kind of a multi-video process where we actually build out kind of a baseline app that you might want to use and actually put in place within your situation. All right, until next time.